Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Guys, Gears, and Grit. And today we are talking about what has quickly become one of my favorite Harley Davidson models. And this is the Harley Davidson VROD. I'm going to tell you a few things I like about it and what I think it faces in competition and why I think you should pick up your very own Harley VROD. Come check it out. Now, as many people know, the Harley Davidson VROD was an entirely new bike when it was first released. The engine itself was actually built in collaboration with Porsche, and so the 60-degree V-twin does an incredible job at making power, making very linear power, while also maintaining its reliability. And this is the first time that Harley Davidson had a liquid-cooled motorcycle, which was a big deal for them because, of course, they've been in, using 1900s technology for 150 years or so. So this is a big leap forward, both in design and both in power. But what they've done, what I love about the 60-degree V-twin is that even though it has modern technology, modern cooling, those sorts of things, it sounds every bit the part of a Harley Davidson. It's got its own distinct tone, but it still very much sounds like a Harley Davidson. The next thing that stands out for me is going to be both the seating position and the position of these forward controls. When I'm on a muscle bike, when I'm on a motorcycle where I just want to go and I want to cruise and I want to relax and have a good time and maybe just do some pulls on the highway, this is the seating position that I want to have. There's no strain on the lower back. I'm not reaching, I'm not too far forward, I'm not too far back. It's literally the perfect seating position. I'm probably the average American male height, 5'10", 5'11", depending on the day. And the seating position I find to be just perfect. The position of the handlebars, the controls, everything is just spot on. You compare that, and I'll talk more about it later, but you compare that with some of the competition, and I think that some of the competition comes up lacking, whereas this, I think Harley Davidson absolutely nailed it. Another thing that's pretty unique is they actually had a hydroformed frame here, which of course Harley has been slapping together frames from guys that have been welding for 80 or 90 years for a long time, but this time they actually used some modern machinery to create this design. And even though this bike is about 15 years old at this point, I still think it looks fairly modern, and you don't see a whole lot else out on the road that has this sweeping design. Of course, this kind of looks like a gas tank. It's not. The gas tank is actually under the seat. The engine is lower in the chassis, and so you really feel like the bike has a lower center of gravity. You hop on a Sportster, you hop on a Road Glide or Road King or any other touring bike, and you can kind of feel the center of gravity a little bit higher up in the chassis, but for this, it feels so low at low speeds and around the city, around the block. The maneuverability and the handling and the comfortability you have handling it is just next level compared to the other Harley Davidson models. Next thing I absolutely love about this particular model, and if you're in the market for one, this is an option I strongly recommend. So it comes with two different rear wheel sizes. One, or rear tire, I should say. One comes with a 180 section rear tire, and the other comes with a 240 rear section tire. Obviously, the 240 makes this bike look absolutely mean. I think it should have come, I think all of the VROD models should have been made with the 240 section rear tire. It just gives it a much beefier look from the rear end, and it looks much more the part of what the bike was intended to be, which is a muscle bike. And that's what this one has here. 240 rear tire, absolutely love it. I can't say this with absolute authority, but having ridden one with a 180 and one with the 240, it feels like the 240 rides a little bit more comfortably as well. Maybe it has a little bit more sidewall. I haven't looked that much into it, but I find this bike to be quite exceptional. So those are some things I love. Let's take a look at the competition. There are two that stand out in my mind. Number one is going to be the Yamaha VMAX. I do love the VMAX. I've probably had 4 or 5 of them over the years, but there's a few things that I think make the VROD the better bike over the VMAX. I think number one, it's much more comfortable than a VMAX, and I find the power delivery on the VROD is going to be much more linear. The VROD, or excuse me, the VMAX power delivery feels very abrupt. This feels much smoother and much more controllable, much more usable. Now on paper, you might look at the VMAX and think it's the better bike because it makes so much more power. It's probably going to be on paper more reliable, but I think that because of the seating position of the VROD, I think because of the power delivery, and I think because of the way this Revolution 60-degree V-twin sounds, I think this is the better buy over the VMAX. And I also think that now with today's prices, the VROD and the VMAX have come down pretty significantly in price if you pick one up on the used market, which you definitely should. I think more often you're more than likely able to find a good deal on the Harley VROD. So that's why I think it stands out above the VMAX. Now, the next one I think is a little bit stiffer of a competition, and that's going to be the Ducati Diavel. This is a wonderful bike. It's a beautiful bike. It's got the single-sided swing arm. The engine sounds amazing. It's got looks for days. It's Italian. What's not to love? Well, what's not to love is the maintenance that has to go into keeping that bike completely up to date and keeping it running well. I have seen several examples of folks not keeping up with the maintenance on their Diavel and subsequently blowing their engine. So maintenance is going to be more expensive on the Diavel. You could argue that it is a prettier bike. However, again, I go back to like the seating position and the placement of the controls. I find this bike to be much more comfortable to ride. I find the suspension a little bit softer. Typically, when we're talking about, you know, a motorcycle or some sort of sports car, you think, you know, soft is you don't want a soft car. You don't want a soft motorcycle. But for a cruiser, for a muscle bike, for something you want to just get out and enjoy some long country roads on, you're going to have more fun on this. You're going to enjoy it more. You're going to go on a long trip. You're going to do 100 miles in an hour and a half, and your back's not going to be sore. Whereas on the Diavel, that might be the case. So I think also in terms of price, again, I go back to the value that you get for this package is going to be much better than the value you get for the Diavel. You're probably going to pay $3,000 or $4,000 less for a similar example of a VROD than you would the Diavel. So you combine that with the extra cost and extra frequency and maintenance, I think the VROD is going to be the better bike. And so in summary, honestly, if maybe you're not a Harley guy, and honestly, I don't really consider myself to be a Harley guy either, but after spending more and more time with this VROD, I'm gonna have to say I'm a VROD guy, and maybe you will be too.